I'll just drop you off, Judd. You go in, and then I'll go find a parking spot, okay?
All right. Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good. You must be Florence.
Right.
I'm
Florence
Dr. David
Gray.
Popkin. Right. And you are?
Walter.
Walter.
Gray.
Very pleased to meet you.
Same here.
And you're related to Florence?
Yes, marriage-wise.
Yes. Husband.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'm one of the oncologists here at the Saskatoon Cancer Centre, and I'll be part of the team that's going to be looking after you. So today...
Hope is something I live by, actually, because I think every day you get up in the morning, there's still hope.
Hope has to do with what you don't really have. Hope has to do with what is possible. So I think it's possible to live in hope and maybe never get what it is that you're hopeful about.
I remember walking out on January 3rd, a very, very cold day, to the car, and not certain how I was going to give this news to Walter, because his mother had died from cancer about 6 years before.
And I'm waiting out in the car and listening to the radio, music, and she comes in, she's got the look. It's not a good look, and I can read that. I know when she's down or she's up, so. And so I just said, well, and she says, they found a lump and they believe it's the real thing, so to the words to that effect. And it really hit me. That was my lowest point, I think, in my life, really.
I won't forget it. It was the day after our wedding anniversary, May the 4th. And Lisa had noticed some lumps, and we went in to see our GP. At the time, we just had a very, very young son. He was maybe 7 months, and our daughter then was barely 2. And my thought was, what the hell am I going to do? On May the 4th, the GP said, yeah, well, in you go. We'll have you booked this week for a biopsy, etc., etc. By the end of the week, we knew that Lisa had lumps that weren't blocked milk ducts.
When the diagnosis is first made, the woman is totally devastated, surprised, scared, but the male partner is equally devastated, a sense of loss of control, grief, anticipatory grief perhaps, of a loss of a loved one.
I was terrified. I still kind of am terrified, I won't lie, because Lisa's mom had breast cancer when she was a very young woman. I think she was in her late 20s. And Lisa's mom died when she was 49. Her cancer recurred, and it was pancreatic cancer, and that was it. So that scared the hell out of me. The flip side of that is that Lisa's grandmother, her mom's mom, also had breast cancer at a very, very young age, and her grandmother's still alive and thriving.
Hope is just indispensable. Erik Erikson, the late psychologist, said back in the 1950s that hope is an indispensable quality of being human, and that if life is to be maintained, you must have hope. And I think we need to recognize that, perhaps even more than the medicine, more than all that science can do for us and does do for us. We need to have some of that inner quality we call hope. Communication is a general challenge in long-term relationships in any case. Some studies show that the main reason for marital breakdown across our whole society is a lack of communication. In times of crisis, we don't suddenly become better communicators. In fact, our poor communication styles will afflict us at times of crisis when we really need to be able to communicate. So that's where getting support and help can really make a difference.
Quite frankly, what I find as an oncologist, each partner wants to protect the other. And so often they don't talk about it with their family or themselves. And so if there's an external person who can initiate that conversation, that would be very helpful.
You go to the doctor and, God, he says all sorts of things, and by the time you've left the room, you can't remember anything. And so we'd sit down after and have coffee or have coffee on the way home and try to figure out what it meant and then what would be a good thing to do. So I think part of the hopefulness is just kind of trying to be helpful without being intrusive, at least in this case.
Okay, we're getting there now.
I remember coming home from Ottawa, which was a long, long ride, and I had purchased something like 16 or 20 tapes that I was so sure everyone at the Hope Centre would be enthusiastic to find out because they were the main speakers, etc. And so we listened to, I think, almost all of those tapes. And then it was an opportunity for him to hear the things that I had heard, and then we discussed as we were going along. So those were subtle ways in which he has been the ongoing support.
I worked with self-help groups for years, and I would hear all kinds of stories. A lot of women would come to the group and say that their husbands couldn't cope. They just couldn't engage in this. Either it was fear, or it was misunderstanding, or perhaps a fragile relationship to start with, and this was going to wedge things open.
I think it's really important to be open to other possibilities here that either your wife will present to you or that others may present to you that you can convey and then discuss with your wife. To be open to reception. In the work that we do, we speak about vulnerability, and vulnerability to a man is a negative thing. Vulnerability suggests, weakness, but vulnerability suggests being open as well.
I think a spouse needs to learn to listen. That's the main thing. In this case, I had to learn to listen to Lisa. That would be the main thing.
Support to the woman who's diagnosed with cancer is crucial, especially from their family and their partner, their husband. They need to know that there's understanding. They're not doing this journey alone.
If things work out well, and the male and the female with the cancer can partner together and gather information from their healthcare givers, social workers, the media, the internet, and learn about breast cancer today, they'll find very quickly that the treatment and the results of treatment of breast cancer today is much different than it was 15 years ago.
Certainly, Lisa's case would be a little different because she knew about this with her grandmother. She saw all this stuff with her mom. And then when this started happening to her, she did scads and scads of her own reading and research. I would say that in addition to listening and being present for one spouse, the next thing a spouse could do would be to try to do some of that background information, try to find out what kind of questions to ask.
What I sort of admired and thought was important was that Sylvia was taking initiatives all along and finding people and starting to read and looking for answers and looking how to be responsive. So I sort of felt that I was there listening to her. I think maybe just really kind of trying to understand where she was at in terms of her own kind of initiatives in being responsive to it, because Sylvia's a pretty activist kind of person, whether she has breast cancer or not.
I think the key is to make the male partner part of the healthcare team. And by that I mean that he attends the consultations with the surgeons, with the oncologists. He understands the disease and what the future is likely to hold, always in the back of their mind realizing that if things go well with follow-up after initial treatment, there could be a recurrence. And then they change their hope. They recalibrate their hope from a cure to perhaps a longer life. and some other things that may go along when there is a recurrence, which is a greater threat of a lack of survival. So I think hope as a concept changes throughout the journey, depending on what part of the journey you happen to be in.
Jerry can be a very determined but a very rational person in terms of her determination. So, you know, she wasn't about to give up, and she started in on some of her pursuits. And then it was a matter of more or less watching Jerry pick certain, you know, appointments and steps and pursuits that she wanted, and then you know, accompanying the process sometimes more closely, sometimes more from a distance. It was a matter of trust and being appreciative of what she was able to, how I could be brought into this. I felt like I was doing something actively for my own health, and I found that really healing. I felt like I was constructively healing myself, and that was important.
We always zero in on the survivor, and one of the things that's always, most people will recognize that families, when they're approached, the comment is, how's your wife? How's your mom? And I ask people to remember to ask the male partner, the spouse, how are you doing? How are you? Because this impacts their life too.
Do you want it in that box here?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't really one who, I didn't go to meetings, but I would, I did a lot of things, you know, whenever they're putting up a display, or they would be, some speaker is coming, or, you know, all this stuff, line up, well, I've done.
Meeting them at the airport.
Yeah,
driving them
I was
to another
a
city.
chauffeur and everything else. I would do things like this, but to sit and listen to everybody's problem on that, I said, I've already faced that part of it, because my wife's had the cancer and my mother.
Men, to the best of my knowledge, don't chit-chat and visit the same way our wives do, but so what? We still visit. You know, I can get together with the guys from work or some of my friends, and we can go for brews or whatever, and we have a talk, and we talk about things that are deeper and more meaningful than, you know, the news or sports or whatever.
I've had this happen to me too, where through Jerry, contact made to Jerry either directly from a woman with breast cancer, a recent diagnosis, or a friend of somebody asking, would it be all right, Jerry, if I asked my friend to phone you? To speak, for the husband to speak to me, or me to speak to the husband.
You'd never know it to look at me, but I started running. It's good, just that kind of repetitive motion, and we can put both kids in the stroller and take them out and whatnot. And so, in a way, you know, I can take the dog and the kids, and it gives Lisa a break from all that kind of stuff, and I get out and I de-stress. It's vital.
The cottage is a very relaxing place for us, and that makes her stop some of the activities she's so involved in, but she's still on the phone.
Good morning, Pat. It's Florence. I just wanted to remind you.
She has to be kept busy, and I like to be busy, but not organized busy. She's an organized person.
So the day I kept a journal, and I was rereading that the other day, and he became very much involved with your tuba again.
Yeah, I got to playing because I had quit conducting in '91. Yeah, before we went to the States.
I'm very blessed to work at an institution, St. Thomas More, that is what's the word I'm looking for? It's friendly, it's personable. The people here really kind of rallied. And one of the things that happened, without any questions, was that the president said, you're going to need time. You have to look after your family. This is what is important, so we'll make it happen.
When you come up against institutional barriers, that's when I lose hope. because I'm not dealing with faces and I'm not dealing with people anymore. I'm dealing with policies, and it's very difficult to get through those. And I think those are the most disheartening, the most discouraging kinds of barriers to run into.
I think employers make a significant difference in terms of their attitude and the kinds of things that they provide.
The employer does need to be really patient, because I'm sure I mean, I had said to her initially, when I come back to work, I probably won't be working at 100%. And she said, oh, that's okay, Sylvia, even if you work at 80%, it's very much like 100% for many other people. She kind of said that, which really, I really clung on to it like some kind of a walking cane.
There are just numerous studies that show that in moments of crisis, many, not all, but many people turn to some kind of support that's going to give them more hope. And for some, that's religion, so they may go back to their religious affiliation of earlier years, or they may, if they're already actively religious, may need to go to a greater depth of faith and practice. An increasing number of people today, they want to pursue that in a non-religious way. They might describe it as searching for their personal spirituality. They might describe it as needing to feel more connected to nature. They might describe it as just wanting to sort out the meaning of their lives. So you could call that spirituality, could call it religion for some people, or you could call it philosophy of life. But many people turn to whatever gives them meaning and purpose at times like this.
I get pretty pissed off with God sometimes, especially about this. Maybe that's a selfish thing, fair enough. But I do take comfort in having a faith, having faith that things will work out as they ought to work out. I believe with every fiber of my being, because I have to believe this, that Lisa will get better and that she'll beat this and she'll have a long and fruitful life like her grandmother. I hope that that's what is in store for her.
It doesn't have to be a religious event or connected with any particular religion, but I think finding people who can help counsel, and that's one source.
Engaging hope. It's a very active thing, and it's very conscious, it's very much a choice, and they very much are needing to look for it. So overall, how they seem to do this is by realizing their situation. It's not really accepting it, but it's just understanding that this is a new reality, and it's one that they don't have control over. And then they go through a process of finding what's helpful.
I think hope is vital. You know, I don't know that it's even measurable. It's absolutely vital. It's necessary. Sine qua non. You have to have it.
Well, Sylvia gives me hope. That's what gives me hope, because Sylvia has this engaged life. As you can tell by her working to address her own situation.
A spouse needs to learn to listen.
Be as fully informed as possible.
We really need to be able to communicate.
Sometimes we forget about supporting the male spouse and how important that is.
I think it's really important to be open.
I think employers make a significant difference.
Think of the positive. Be hopeful.
Of course there's hope. There's always hope.
I'm going to keep joking, and I'm going to keep using humor, because I think it's so important.
And I get my hope from my religious beliefs.
Man, don't give up hope. Just find out what it is you can still hope for and do it.